I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. Welcome back, Golan. We are happy you survived your vacation. It's good to see you. It's good to have you back.
Happy to be back.
And it's just not the same without you. And I want to remind everybody to follow us and also put on that instant download. Greatly helpful for us and greatly helpful for you because you won't then miss the episode. So with that being said, welcome back, Golan. I want to start this out with a trivia quiz, Golan. Okay, you ready? This is a trivia quiz for both of you.
Let's do it.
Okay, you guys ready?
Try us.
Okay, last time there was a Republican mayor of St. Louis.
1896.
Never.
1949.
Close enough.
Man, we're good at this.
San Francisco.
70s.
1952.
You're in between. 1964. Oakland.
Say 60s.
76.
You're not far off. 77. Baltimore.
72.
Baltimore is probably 80s. I would say 80s.
67.
Oh God.
Man, other way.
Detroit.
Detroit was a big thing in the auto industry days. So I would go with the 70s too. When the auto industry failed, let's go with that. 70s.
Golan.
I am going to say 1981.
1957. Atlanta.
Hotlanta. We love Hotlanta. Shout out to all our peeps in Hotlanta. We get a lot of comments from Hotlanta.
We actually do have a lot of listeners in Atlanta.
I know, we do. I'm going to go with 90s, early
1901.
Golan's closer. 1879.
Seriously.
Oh my God. Jeez.
The Democrats were slave masters back then. How did they just continue? There was no break. The first Republicans were a whole bunch of black people that got together to get rid of the slavery thing. You would think Atlanta would have gone Republican at that point.
Okay, Milwaukee.
It's Laverne and Shirley. So let's say, not that that has anything to do with it. I'm just vamping
Milwaukee's
for time.
Actually a Native American name, Milwaukee.
Yes, I also watched Wayne's World.
Exactly. That's where I got it.
Let's say 1915.
You're close. 1908. I could keep going down the list, but the last one I'll end with is Chicago.
Chicago. I would go with.
Chicago's got to be
70s.
more recent.
Yeah, 70s.
Yeah, I would say 70. 1976 again.
1931.
This is a sad statement.
You know what what it proves is that everybody says these cities need to fail in order to learn a lesson. We need to let the cities burn so that they come back. That only happened in New York. We had Dinkins, the mayor of New York, who let it just turn into a dumpster. And then you had Giuliani come and clean it up. It doesn't happen in other places. We just talked about cities that have been Democrat run for 100 years, and they've been just on a slow decline forever. 50-something
these are cities that have
Chicago.
problems. You're talking about crime and poverty and broken schools and population decline and corruption, and they just keep voting the same way.
Same thing.
It's hard for me to fathom.
It's unbelievable.
The interesting thing, though, really is the fact that Chicago's demographics have really changed compared to a lot of those other places. Like Newark, it's been 100 years. Compton, it's been 100 years. So those, in a sense, many of those places have really been the same. I'm guessing. But Golan, when you look at Chicago, I mean, it was obviously Italian, it was Irish. So it was run by the Dailies for many years. For, I think, about 40 years, the Dailies were mayors of Chicago, at least. And also, I just want to let you know something very interesting that I was talking with Mend about. There are 32,000 cameras in Chicago. The police have access to 32,000 cameras, yet nobody gets arrested.
The issue there is not the crime. It's not identifying the criminals. They know who the criminals are. They arrest people. But it's a revolving door of the justice system where there's no cash bail. Someone gets caught with a gun. He shot 7 people. They let him out the next day. He goes out and he shoots 7 more. That's Chicago. 52 people were shot last weekend. I can't wait to see the stats this weekend.
Well, it's actually 53 this weekend so far on Labor Day.
Still counting.
And 7 murdered. But Golan, to the bigger point is, I was looking into anything, if there's anything the president could do. So obviously he federalized the police and brought in the National Guard in Washington, which Muriel Bowser is thanking God that he did on a daily basis because the crime rates have gone. I mean, they've dropped.
She's being attacked. She's being attacked all over the place because she thanked Trump for reducing the criminality in Washington.
And she acknowledged how well he did. So getting back to it, though, Chicago's interesting because they've had Republican governors, but they haven't voted Republican for president since 1992. It's just so bizarre that Pritzker and this jackass Johnson are so against saving the lives in their own city, and yet you don't hear the city revolting and begging Trump, really, please, maybe you do a little bit, please come here. Because
Maybe
he
the
doesn't.
citizens, yes, but the politicians, absolutely not. Look, you're talking about kind of a perfect case study in political Groundhog Day. It just never changes, never changes. Maybe it gets worse, actually. So it's like downslide Groundhog Day. If you really think about a city like Chicago, with all the problems that Chicago has, having this streak, it's like this dynasty of dysfunction, just this
I like that.
slide.
I like that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But I really think about it is because every Democrat that comes in says the same thing. We promise you that we're going to fix crime. We're going to fix the schools. We're going to fix corruption or whatever it is they say. And every time crime spikes, the schools collapse, there's corruption scandals. And this is really the epitome of what it looks like when there's no competition. Because no competition breeds corruption. It breeds laziness. Nobody has to earn anything because they know it's automatically going to get that box ticked. And it's just a loop of constant failure. And the people who are living there, the good people, the decent people are the ones who pay the price. They're the
fine
ones,
people.
the fine people on both sides. Those people are the ones who are praying that Trump will actually step down.
That's true. It's absolutely true. You're seeing it in Washington. I saw a headline. I didn't read the article. Someone in the USA Today posted an article about a resident or residents from Washington, D.C. thanking Trump for cleaning up the city. It's 3 months ago, you would never guess that USA Today, a left-leaning paper, would give Trump any kind of credit, but it's undeniable. Like, the residents of Washington are all saying the exact same thing. Thank you for sending in the National Guard. Thank you for making the city safe. It's not a stretch. It's insane that we have to argue that this is a good thing, but that's where we are here in America in 2025, where it doesn't matter what the guy does.
By the way, that Bowser, by the way, it's not like she's praising him and saying, thank you, Trump, for coming and saving our city. She is merely acknowledging that there was a drop in crime, merely acknowledging that she was unable to do it. That's it. That's all she needed to get lambasted. Can you imagine?
Lambasted is an understatement. She's on the blacklist from the Democrats. They'd like to
you say that in the most unracist way, the blacklist. But I want to go back to this so quickly.
I missed you guys so much. Continue.
I want to get back to this, though, quickly, because this is where I go to messaging again. Now, I did a little deep dive into this, right? Obviously, because I was curious. You have to be curious about when these things started, or you should be. This should be, and we have a new thing going on that we're doing. It was helped by a friend of ours, because we're going to say, who said it first? So ideas of ours or ideas of the Judas don't get snagged. We're going to do who said it first. So go on. I say to you, messaging wise, somebody in the Republican Party should put billboards up showing when the last time they voted a Republican in as mayor. Like somebody literally in Baltimore, there should be billboards all over.
You know what? It should one step further. The billboard should say, here's the crime rate, and just go through the crime rate every year. Every year.
That's actually great.
And
I think
Democrat.
We'll do that. Yeah, American exceptionalism, idea. We're going to start putting that out. Maybe not billboards. We'll start off with social posts where we go through every single city and we just highlight who's been in control of that city for the last umpteen years. The guy who actually gave us the idea of who said it first, or the one who's helping us propel this forward. Shout out to Ron Burgundy. We love that guy. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway. Yeah. Moving on.
But I just think it's important to note, and I think it's important that they somehow get this messaging out, because I can't think of better messaging than touching on a subject like this. I really can't. And so it is Labor Day, and things seem to be going quite well. Inflation obviously is still a little high. There's zero he could do about that. Really, for the most part, you could try. And I'm not the economist, so you could talk to a lot of economists about this, Golan. But I just want to ask you quickly, both. I ask this to you both seriously. And in the most nonpartisan of ways, is there anything since Trump took over that has gone reverse? Everything just seems better. Foreign policy is better. Domestic policy is better. Everything has just taken a total. It's been a total 180.
I was listening to the guys on All In, the All In podcast guys. It's a bunch of billionaire hedge fund guys. They're so good. I highly recommend it. But they were pointing out that Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, when it came to Biden, he was lowering interest rates and doing everything he could to make that guy's numbers look great. And then when Trump got into office and interest rates were all jacked up, he's doing everything he can to keep them high. Now, there's an argument to say we don't know what's happening with tariffs and blah, 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 and how it's all going to play out. But the one undeniable fact is that the economy is booming. Jobs, the joblessness rate is record low. Everything is going great. There is absolutely no reason for him not to lower interest rates unless he's trying to hurt the Trump administration and the optics of what it looks like for that administration. Because if people can't buy homes, there's going to be a lot of disenfranchised, angry young people that should be able to afford a home, but they can't. And that was the argument that they were making. And they were bringing the receipts, they were bringing the stats. And it's undeniable that this guy favored the previous administration. He was pressured by Elizabeth Warren to lower the interest rates when it was for Biden. But now when Trump's saying it, for some reason, they're all screaming separation, church and state. The government should have no say over the Fed. So when it's their people in power, it's no problem for them to pressure him to lower interest rates. And when it's Trump in power, oh, this is fascism and you can't do it. So
I think it's also important to note, though, Golan, what he's talking about is the All In podcast. They're not Republicans. They
not.
went, which is an important pre-qualifier.
Well, what they are is they're hedge fund managers. These guys are billionaires. It's all about the money for them.
It's not just about money with them. They have actually. I listen to the show. They actually do care about DEI.
When I say it's all about the money, when it comes to policy, there's two ways to look at things. There's one way to look at it where it's an ideological standpoint, where you say we need to allow boys into girls' sports, or we need to all this stuff. And then there's another way to look at it. If I'm a team owner, if I own a basketball team or any kind of team, and I allow a trans guy to get on the girls' team, what is that going to do for my bottom line? And that is absolutely going to destroy your bottom line. Your fans are going to hate it. So when I say they're all about the money, they're just looking at, from a very practical standpoint, does this make sense? Don't care about ideology. We don't care about, talking points or whatever. Bottom line, is this going to help the country or is it going to hurt the country? Is it going to help the company or is it going to hurt the company? And that's how they view it. That's the lens they view it through. They are left leaning. They're not Republicans. So
it's interesting. You say left leaning, but if you think about who's in that podcast, you're talking about people like David Sachs or David Friedberg, right? Some of these people, and I can't remember who the other names are, but some of them, but some of them started left and are still left when it comes to the stuff Judah's talking about. They still do care about DEI if they can square the circle of doing something that will lean left but will still help their bottom line, they'll do it. But now they're also hosting fundraisers for Trump. So it's an interesting thing because some of them, while they lean left, are actually realizing that the left is destroying their bottom line, which goes to what you were saying, Mend, that their bottom line does matter despite the fact that they wish they could find these Democrats not to be quite so insane.
Yeah, no, true. Absolutely. When they switched, Mark Andreessen, David Horowitz. So Mark Andreessen went on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about why he was backing Trump. The policies.
An amazing podcast, by the way.
Fantastic. Highly encourage
one of his last.
One of his last good ones. 100% agree.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to go listen to that podcast. It was absolutely fantastic. But he was talking about the tyranny of the Biden administration when it comes to American businesses. Basically, everything they were doing,
platforming, all of that.
All of it. Everything they were doing was destroying America. It was destroying American enterprise, American businesses. There was no real smart people at the top that took a global view. It was all idealistically driven. So they wanted more trans people in certain places. They wanted more diversity and equity and inclusion, and not equality, equity, which doesn't matter the effort you put in. We're going to make sure you all get to the same place at the end. So if I go to work and I work 13 hours a day and I weld pipes and I'm, busting my chops, I'm going to make the whatever it is, $400 a day. And the guy who doesn't go to work and he's just sitting home playing Xbox, he's also going to get the same whatever it is that I made that day. That's equity. Equity doesn't make any sense.
You got it. You hit the nail on the head. Mark that time. Go on to his point, which I think is a great point. I'm happy he brought up the All In podcast, because it is important that we do have these sort of bipartisan podcasts too, extremely, especially when it comes to finances. And obviously their bottom line is finances. Let's not kid ourselves. But at the same time, these are Silicon Valley guys who are changing the landscape of Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley has been known to be a progressive, hellish nightmare that produces hellish results, as we've witnessed in San Francisco, not just with crime on the street, but affordability. You could work in Silicon Valley, but you got to live 5 hours away for the most part, most of these people. So I think it's great. I'm very happy he brought that podcast up, but it goes to show that Trump has been on a roll.
Yeah. And look, if you pressed me, and I'll say, if you pressed me to look at it from a liberal perspective, I could name a handful. You read articles all the time where they say, here's the problem Trump has, here's the problem Trump has. And it's always the same list. And the list is always BS. And I don't mean that they don't feel it's BS. In their mind, the idea that like the labor unions are crying foul will always be on the list. Then you go, oh, wait, that's not failure, it's reform. Never mind, put that one aside. Then they'll say, like you said, man, the tariffs are hurting the people on the street. It's like, okay, they're meant to hurt China. Over time, we're seeing them work, and we still have to see where they'll go in the long run. But here we go. We're watching a reform happen. Again, reform. The idea of taking money away from FEMA, the idea of taking money away from the CDC, the idea of taking money away from UNRWA, all of these things, they will name these things as if they are failures. But Judah, to your question, what are the actual failures up until this point in the Trump administration? Or what? Not even failures. What are the things that are not going well? I'm hard pressed to find any. Because if you're talking about challenging the courts, I'm in. If you're talking about, all the stuff I just mentioned, reducing the power that some of these global elite kind of institutions that we know are ultra corrupt have, I'm in. If you're talking about visa revocation, if you're talking about going after terrorists, if you're talking about foreign aid cuts, all of the stuff that we've covered that they would say is a net negative is ultimately a net positive. So I actually, to answer your question, I can't think of any.
You're muted.
I'm going to go farther and say he posted this today, and I just want to, it is very important that the drug companies justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people think that they are a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree. With CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer, and I want it now. I have been shown information from Pfizer and others that it is extraordinary, but they never seem to show those results to the public. Why not? They go off to the next hunt and let everyone rip themselves apart, including Bobby Kennedy Jr. and the CDC, trying to figure out the success or failure of the drug companies' COVID work. They show me great numbers and results, but they don't seem to be showing them to many others. I want them to show them now, and to the CDC and to the public, and clear up this mess one way or the other. I hope Operation Warp Speed was brilliant, and many say it was. If not, we all want to know about it and why. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter. DJT, I love how when he answers that, go on. And he says, thank you.
It's always amazing.
I love that tag. But the thing I wanted to say is, have you ever seen, going back to have you ever seen a president investigate himself? Because that's what he's doing.
It's really interesting, because he is not doing what I think a lot of people on the left would expect him to do, which is just to say, to kind of roll into whatever the kind of the most conspiracy laden version of this would be, right? The COVID vaccine didn't do anything and we were lied to. And he's not even making a statement. He's saying, forget propaganda. Let's talk proof. Show us proof and let's go. He literally is saying, I want to see the outcome.
But again, Golan, more importantly, he's saying investigate me, because he started Operation Warp Speed. How many people would ever say, investigate the program I helped launch? I want to see if it was successful or it wasn't.
Yeah. It's true democratic transparency. There's no other way to put it.
That's what transparency looks like.
That's all you got on that?
That's all I got. I love it. I think it's
I
great.
figured you'd be the happiest guy in the world on this.
Look, I applaud the president for enacting Operation Warp Speed. The drugs that these companies made caused a lot of vaccine injuries. A lot of people died or are injured from
This
those
is the
drugs.
assumption, right? This is actually why he's requesting this, because if they actually saved millions of lives or whatever it is, then show the data. Great. If they
Right.
didn't, then show us that and forget now as everyone goes to prison, then let's fix it. He's true accountability. He's not saying something that is off the rails crazy. He's saying if it worked, great, let's do it again. But now let's let everyone understand that they can trust us because we're going to be transparent about it. And if it didn't work, let's be transparent about that and let's fix it so next time we don't have this problem.
Exactly. So you got to give the guy props for the overt transparency that he's calling for on this stuff. The drug companies profited billions, if not trillions of dollars off of COVID. I am very happy that RFK changed the recommendations from CDC for COVID shots to only include people with, secondary conditions or people at risk, comorbidities. That is who should be taking it from day one.
For children. That was for, especially if you're like until the age of 38 or something. It was like you have to go through the doctor's office as a Golan. I don't know if you saw that story while you were on the river, but it was basically like a certain age demographic that has to get a doctor. If you're over a certain age, you automatically can get it. But if you don't have, if you're a child or whatever, and you don't have comorbidities, you should not be getting it, man.
So there's an ancient rule that's on the books that basically these pharmaceutical companies made with the government. It was a deal. And they said, we will invent vaccines, but we want to be indemnified from injury from these vaccines. And they basically blackmailed the government. They said, look, if you don't give us this blanket protection from lawsuits for vaccines, we're not going to create vaccines. And the government gave it to them. And the way that protection works is that when the government recommends a vaccine for a certain demographic or age group, then the drug companies are indemnified. RFK, our MAHA, Make America Healthy Again leader, removed those recommendations from healthy young Americans, which is absolutely the right thing. I never vaccinated my kids. Unfortunately, I vaccinated myself. My mom had
you be specific. You mean you never vaccinated your kids with the COVID vaccine?
With COVID. No, they have all the other vaccinations. They don't have COVID. The measles, bumps, rubella, we broke those up. We didn't give it to them at the same time. So there were slight precautions we took with those other ones, but we gave it to them. But we did not give them the COVID vaccine. Unfortunately, my wife and myself took the COVID vaccine, and I regret it. I hope we hadn't. My mom had just died from COVID in a nursing home in New York because of Cuomo, who sent sick patients into the nursing homes. She was there for rehab, learning how to walk again after a fall, and wound up never leaving the place. So I was a little freaked out, and we took it. That said,
and I lived through that nightmare with you on the phone. I mean, there is nothing worse, I got to say this, than talking to somebody you love, like you, even though you drive me crazy all the time, telling me how he was checking in on his mom. He was using the Amazon camera.
Nice.
And he had her face at his mother, and then she wasn't there. And he couldn't even get an answer, Golan, from the nursing homes of what happened. And he was in Canada at the time.
Worse than that, I was in Canada. She was in New York. Worse than that, the staff at the nursing home that had parents or loved ones in the nursing home knew what was coming, and they pulled their families out without telling us that we should probably do the same. We could have taken her home. She wasn't, she was just there getting standard rehab. They had a great rehabilitation center. So anyway, long story short, really happy that RFK changed the rules on COVID, and it's all sensical. This is all things that absolutely make sense. Young, healthy kids should not be getting that COVID shot, and older, at risk, morbidly obese, people with other conditions should get it. And that's what he did. So he fixed it. So thank God he did that.
And
I just for our audience, this is something that happened under President George W. Bush. I know your favorite president, Judah. And so, this is something that happened there. There was a thing called the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act. And it's the thing that basically indemnified all these companies, the thing the man was talking about. And I will say that when it started, as many of these things do, there was some kind of logic behind it. At the time, the idea was we want to stop frivolous lawsuits or something like that. The problem now is and I'm probably undercutting the amount, a $4 billion a year industry with no questions asked, prop up by these immunity laws that now shield the companies instead of scrutinizing them. And I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, trust but verify, right? Right now, we are meant to trust these companies, but they give us no information that allows us to verify. To me, that is 1984 madness. And that's what this thing that Trump is doing right now is meant to adjust, meant to yield, is response for us to be able to at least understand why these things are being told to us, why they're being given to us, how they function, etc., instead of just saying, as one horrible man once did, I am the science, just listen up and shut up.
By the way, I just want to, add one thing. Pharmacies were making a killing off this too. I want to say it was about $80 for every shot they gave. That's how much they received. And that's not, and I might be underestimating how much they received every time they gave a shot. So all those commercials, right? And at the time I was saying, why are we not seeing commercials for being in health, eating healthy, taking these things? All we were seeing is men constantly brings up with commercials. None of the commercials were, live like this, live a certain way, eat healthier. Everything was go to your local pharmacy and get the shot. And those local pharmacies were making a fortune on these vaccines, a fortune. By the way, Rite Aid has gone out of business. If people are pretty much has gone fully out of business, which I learned the other day. But that is totally separate. That's because of the oxycodone lawsuits. Golan, though, I want to bring up, though, I don't want there to be revisionist history because we often do have a lot of revisionist history. Something was going on and Trump didn't know about none of us knew the extent of what was going on. He shut down the airlines from China. He was called the xenophobe, right, by Nancy Pelosi. He did everything in his power to protect Americans. He listened to the scientists, and stupidly, he didn't go with his own gut on certain things, especially when it came down to the lockdowns, because that's really what he wanted to do. He didn't want to lock us down forever. But Operation Warp Speed was a success in the sense of the government and the drug companies working extremely fast together. No other president could have gotten that done that quickly and bypassed all the FDA regulations with COVID tests, with everything else. So I do applaud him on that, as I applaud him for investigating himself. And remember, we lack ventilators. He got ventilators into mass production. These are things we forget that he was doing at that time, Golan.
Yeah. And let's be honest. We all know this. Everyone listening to this knows this. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. Nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew what it meant. So trusting the science, quote unquote, a TM, I should put at the end of that, is the only thing we all could do at that point. And little by little, as we had time to sit and stew, as we all did, then we started thinking about, wait a minute, does this even make sense? And then there were cracks in the logic, cracks in the messaging that kept flip-flopping. Masks don't work. Wait, they do work. Don't close borders. Actually close the borders. Wipe down your Amazon boxes. Spray it with bleach. No, actually it's airborne. They kept changing. So little by little, we realized, wait a minute, they don't know what's going on either. So that instinct that we had to go, okay, this thing is crazy. We have to do something about it. Trump, as you said, shut down airlines, which in retrospect actually bought the United States weeks. No matter which way you look at COVID, it actually did buy us weeks to prepare. We didn't know that people who got on ventilators were probably never going to get off of them. That was what the science said. So all of these things that he was doing were including Operation Warp Speed, were directly in line with what the experts were saying. And it only as time went on was it that we realized that, wait a minute, sunlight, vitamin D, clean air, all of these other things that only make sense, don't be obese, etc. Children are not being affected. All of that seeped into our public consciousness that we realized that this was all, again, nonsense, all BS. And of course, later, even more came out, as we all know. Even the 6 feet thing was just made up. Whole cloth, made up.
No, my favorite thing, and I'll let men go, was you could walk into a restaurant, you had to wear a mask, but when you got to your table, you could take off the mask to eat, as somehow that prophylactic was the perfect distance. Like, I mean, it just
forget restaurants. How about on a plane? when you are in a tube where the air is only circulating internally and you were allowed to take your mask off only when you took the bite of food, then you had to put it back up to chew, then take it down. Literally, when you think about it in retrospect, it all was retarded.
Man,
These people are beyond stupid. They were malicious. When Trump was still president and he came out with the vaccine, they were doing Operation Warp Speed. You had Vice President Kamala Harris and many other Democratic leaders saying, I will not take that vaccine. We don't trust it. When he was president and he shut down the airlines, they called him xenophobic for, blocking Chinese people from coming to America. They promoted, I believe it was Mardi Gras, and there was another
Chinatown event. There was an event in Chinatown that Nancy Pelosi
it was Chinese
actually,
New Year. Chinese New Year, New York City did not want to shut down the giant New Year's celebration party in the city, and de Blasio was out there partying with them. And then as soon as Biden came into office, everything switched. Everybody must take the vaccine. If you don't, you're a Nazi and you're killing my grandmother, and you're not allowed to congregate. You can't go to church. You can't go to temple. You can go to Black Lives Matter rallies and protests and burn down cities without masks. That's okay. But everything else was not okay. You can't go to the park. You can't go to the beach. You can't go to the playground. You can't get sun. So all of those things just displayed the hypocritical stance that these people were taking, where it was all about politics. It was all about power.
I'll take it even a step further. Let's take it a step further. Is when Trump was there and this was going on, he held press conferences every day as people were trapped in their house to try to reassure Americans. Every single day he was doing that. When he lost, it was all done under a dark cloud. You have to do this, this, and this, and this. Nothing. We lost all forms of transparency.
True.
The day.
And who started giving those press conferences after that? It was the Cuomo brothers, making fun of everybody, mocking the whole system, killing patients in nursing homes. Cuomo, who's now running for mayor of New York, killed over 10,000 people in nursing homes. 50-something people died in my mom's nursing home alone. And I'm talking about all different ethnicities, all different types. There was anyway. But one of the other things we talked about is none of them were promoting the things that were actually good for you, like Golan said, getting outside, getting sunlight, eating healthy, losing
Exercise.
weight. The people, exercising. What they were doing was de Blasio, the mayor of New York. This guy ruined New York. He was terrible, terrible human being, absolute vile human being, disgusting. He should get anal cancer and live out the rest of his days in pain. But that guy was on TV saying, go get the vax and we'll give you a Big Mac and some fries. So don't live healthy. Don't eat healthy. Let me give you a Big Mac and fries. And he made the worst commercial, him and his retarded wife or ex-wife. I think she left him after the thing. But they made these ridiculous videos, obviously charging New York City taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce these things. But it was all about, them dancing with McDonald's stuff, trying to convince people to go get vaccinated. Absolute.
While they padlocked the gyms, while they chained up playgrounds, while they put cops on beaches, while they literally chased down surfers. I watched these stories of them chasing down lone surfers in the middle of the water. You can just see a dot in the distance, and then they arrest those people because of the COVID. It's just
I just want to tell you the worst. I just want to tell you the worst part about it. The worst thing about it was that if you dissented, you go to 1984, you were considered a traitor. If you asked any question about this, you were considered anti-American. You were considered anti-science. It was literally 84 mixed with how Hitler got into power, which was the science. And I'm only invoking Hitler because that was a massive part of.
Let me just say this. If that superbug, that pandemic actually was as lethal as they were making it out to be, you could justify a lot of that stuff. Not the crazy stuff, not the it's okay to riot, but not okay to protest. It's okay to riot, but not okay to go to church. Like that stuff is obviously insane. But if there's a bubonic plague going around or something that is killing, say, 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, I would be the first one to be living in a mountain cabin, staying away from everybody. Like, sure, this thing wasn't it, but they were so desperate. Bill Gates and Fauci were so desperate to finally get their hands on a pandemic that they could use to, 1, make billions of dollars, and 2, control the population.
See, but
finally
this
run
is
their
the key.
experiment.
This is the key, man, is what you're saying. It's what you were just talking about a moment ago with the vax incentives. By the way, for those of you who do not know this, he's not kidding. The vax incentives were literally Krispy Kreme donuts, Shake Shack burgers, fries, Big Macs. I mean, these were real things. They said, if you get the vax, we'll give you all this free crap, which is literally promoting the same garbage that drives the obesity and drives the diabetes, which are two of the biggest risk factors for COVID. So this is why I mention it, because forget COVID. We're kind of relitigating this thing that happened in the past. Why is it important to remember this now? Not just because Trump is talking about it, but because healthy, resilient people do not need the government to save them. Scared, sedentary, trapped, sugar-addicted people are easier to control. They take every shot. They listen to every mandate. They follow every restriction. No questions asked. They did this in order to control people. And I don't want to say this was a pilot program as if it was something they did deliberately, but I think, as Men said, they were waiting for the opportunity to test it out. And
Listen,
because it worked,
I'm the last person, Golan. I am the
Yeah.
last person, and I just want to move on, but I'm the last person to ever talk. I'm not the last person, but I really got into the idea of beta testing, of what beta testing looks like during COVID, because I had a friend who I was talking with Mend about, who I'm no longer friends with, who is one of those people, and I'm not kidding. One time he had me outside of a restaurant and he started showing me the trails in the sky, you know, the chemtrails, and he started showing me all these things. And this is a person who I love, who's had a hard time staying, let's just say, sober. And but then he was talking to me about beta testing, and I really didn't understand the concept. Now, when he started talking to me about beta testing, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, you turn off the electric grid in a certain area and you see people's response, right? This was the ultimate beta testing. You put people on curfew, you put people on lockdowns. Just want to end it with this. The reason why it's still important to talk about, it only happened 5 years ago, okay?
We're not sure.
And if it was indeed beta testing, and even if it wasn't beta testing, they saw the results. And that means they can do it again. And that means they know that they can control people. And they know that there is a segment of the population that will do whatever it is that they tell them. And the reason we're mentioning this is so that you are now aware of it. So when you see it coming, you can say no. And that's why it's important.
Okay, I want to move on. So there was a rumor going on all weekend on X, and just absolute depravity. You know, when it comes to Trump and death, you really have to be very careful, especially since the guy almost died, if not for a quarter of an inch or a quarter of a second.
2 times.
2 times, right. But one actual bullet. And you really have to be. This is one of those things that should be really taboo with anybody. I would never, I don't wish this on anybody. I don't ever talk about that. You know, they have those death pools, which I think are gruel. And, but going all weekend, and I know you missed this story because you were rock climbing up Kilimanjaro with the family. But all weekend long, the White House had to come out, and it all started because he hadn't been publicly seen since Tuesday, since a press conference on Tuesday. And so the White House had to show proof of golf life on Saturday. And but this was going on all over X and all over online. And I had a theory, but man, you could play the audio from the USA Today interview. That would be great.
USA Today interviewed JD Vance, and they asked him about his ability to take over if, God forbid, something was to happen. Let's play it.
Things can always happen. Yes, terrible tragedies happen, but I feel very confident the President of the United States is in good shape, is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. And if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days.
And you're missing some of the other quotes in there. But yeah, so JD Vance gave an interview to the USA Today Golan, and this came out, I believe, Friday morning. You could fact check me on that interview. And a lot of the rumors started circulating after these said statements were made. Now, I could extrapolate, Golan. I don't think it's crazy to say that this sort of did give a little bit of fuel to this insane fire. I mean, because if JD Vance is asked this question, there's at this point, first of all, you could easily say, did you ask that to the last administration? And of course, he's going to say, yes, he's running laps around us. We all know Trump is up. All you have to do is go on Truth Social for proof of life. It's endless proof of life on Truth Social. So just, I don't understand. And I discussed this with Men last night. He either you just say, what are you, out of your mind? I'm not answering that question. It's just ridiculous. But to add to it, I don't know why. I mean, I could think of reasons why he might have, but I don't know why he answered this question. I don't know why he answered the question the way he did. And I do believe it gave fuel to this online fire, but I could be wrong.
It's so strange. Again, I did in fact miss the story because I was gone. But I parrot your question here. Has any other, and I'm genuinely asking because I cannot recall a time, has any other U.S. vice president ever been directly asked that question in such blunt terms? It seems bizarre. Do we know? Has it ever happened before?
No, I can't think of, in my lifetime, I can't think of another vice president being asked that. I also can't think of another vice president that's actually answered the question in
Well,
lengthy detail.
I know that other people have been asked, are you ready to assume the presidency? But it's always framed as if when it is your time, not as in Biden just pooped himself on stage and can you take over? So the question being asked in this way, so unusually direct, is sensationalistic. That's the whole point. It's designed to go viral. So that in and of itself already is journalistic malpractice. But the idea that Trump was dead, this hoax, already happened, if I recall, back in 2023. Didn't it already happen? His Twitter was hacked or something?
It was one.
And they said he was dead, and then he wasn't. And this time, what, he went golfing? I don't even, what was it, 4 days? He wasn't in the public eye? This is literally just the media trying to generate fear-mongering, trying to generate a story where there is none, trying to push a hoax that I don't even know what to say about it. It's stupid. I don't even know what to say about it.
I have a theory. I think that there are some attention-seeking pranksters or some lunatics, that are on Twitter that hope he would die and just decided to run with a rumor and it caught fire. As far as what JD Vance was asked and what he answered, I mean, the guy was asked, President Trump is one of the oldest presidents we've ever had. You're one of the youngest vice presidents we ever had. Would you be ready to take over if, God forbid, something was to happen? And his answer was yes. Things can always happen. Yes, terrible tragedies happen, but I feel very confident that the President of the United States is in good shape and is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. And if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten in the last 200 days. I don't see anything wrong with what he said.
He went off the rails in the second half of that answer. If there was a terrible tragedy, the first part I would give him.
That was actually the first thing he said was, Golan. The first thing he said was, on the questioning, yes, terrible tragedies happen, he said he's prepared to run the country if, God forbid, something terrible, using that word again, were to happen to the president. If, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think, he said it, I think, 3 times, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days.
I don't know what you're reading. We heard the audio. The audio was...
I'm reading it exactly from the New York Post transcript.
I just played it the way it was.
I know, but
that's not what he said first.
No.
This is from the interview.
Jude is right. What you just played, it's the first time I'm hearing it, is he said, look, terrible things happen all the time, but I'm sure nothing's going to happen. But if something terrible did happen, essentially. So him saying terrible things happen all the time, that is a bad answer. That is a politician screwing up his answer. Because the answer to that question is, what a ridiculous question. President Trump is running circles around all of us. Go on Truth Social at 3 o'clock in the morning. You'll see the man doesn't sleep. He's constantly doing stuff. And what, he hasn't been seen for 48 hours. You're asking a silly question. Let's move on. What is he trying to do? Promote himself as a guy who's ready to take over the presidency? It's an unnecessary rake to step on.
I will say that I think he could have done better. I also do not hold it against him at all. I don't think he dropped the ball on this one. He said the guy is doing a fantastic job. He's the best trainer I've ever, gotten. He's prepared me for whatever comes next. There are psychos out there trying to kill the guy on a daily basis, and God forbid, we hope that doesn't happen. That's basically what he said. Right?
Can I tell you something? I want to tell you something that people often ask me and people often say to me, especially because obviously I'm very close with Ben Stein and we do a show together called The World According to Ben Stein. And I know there have been many that ask me like, well, what, they ask me certain questions and I say, are you crazy? I'm not answering. I'm enjoying this time while we have
True,
it.
that's what I'm saying. He could have done it better. He should have said that's an insane question. The guy is kicking ass. He's healthy. He sleeps 3 hours a night. And
they set a trap and he walked into it because they didn't ask him, are you ready to lead? Like they've asked every other VP, as we were talking about. They asked him, imagine Trump in a coffin. What could you do? And he was like, hey, if Trump's in a coffin, everything will be fine. I don't think he'll be in a coffin, but if I see a coffin, like he walked directly into a trap. That is a rake he did not have to step on. What he should have done is shut it down and call it what it is. Call it trash, call it disrespectful, call it beneath the dignity of the office. He did not need to do
So-
what he
Or
did.
hang up the phone.
I agree with both of you guys. He could have done better. When I read about it and when I heard about it, I thought it was a lot worse. And then I went and I said, you know what? Before we talk about this, I'm not going to pull a crystal ball and a Sagar and JD where they talked about the trigonometry podcast interview with Bibi without ever listening to it.
By the way,
did find that out. You
unbelievable.
found that
You
out.
got to watch.
And
You got
what's
to watch
amazing
the
is
response that the trigonometry guys had to it. I'm
I
just saying,
did.
watch it. It's
What's
unbelievable.
amazing is
It's
what's amazing is the
incredible.
only reason he even did this is because of me. I'm the one that told him about
Yes.
the BB interview, and then he followed up listening to it.
I
because
will
told
say
him,
that Judah
how
told
about you
me.
give credit to me when
Hold
you
on.
say Judah said this was a great interview, and then Judah said listen to the follow up.
Well, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to give Judah credit for both of these things. Judah told me about the JD Vance thing because I haven't really heard. I saw rumors, but I didn't connect it to JD Vance at all. Judah told me that this may have been spurred by this weird interview that JD Vance gave to USA Today. I'm like, USA Today? Why would he even be talking to them? What? Sure. Before we get on this show and talk about it, I'm going to listen to that interview. And after I listened to it, I was like, oh, this is not bad, actually. This is not a big deal. I don't think this is what would have spurned it on. I think that there are some pranksters online that pulled a prank and it went viral. It took off and it went crazy. As far as the trigonometry thing, we could talk about that one. One of the best lines of that entire recap was Constantine goes, her name is Crystal Ball and she doesn't know.
No. So just so people understand what we're talking about, the trigonometry did
Did
an
a hard-hitting
interview
interview. It was a hard-hitting
Yeah,
interview with BB,
with BB, and so did Patrick
the
Bet
Prime
David.
Minister of Israel.
And
talking about the
Crystal
war.
Ball and her sidekick Golan were talking about the interview, but they admitted that they had not watched the interview.
Yeah, they didn't listen to it. They
So,
didn't do
so
any
they
of
were
it.
commenting on
This is,
clips in
by
the
way, for those of
interview,
you,
and Crystal
for those of
Ball
you who didn't see
said,
this, hang on. For those of you who didn't see this, we're talking about the show Breaking Points. It's Crystal and it's Sagar, right? Sagar. And these two who, by the way, I listened to 3 episodes because I was like, is there something here? Is there not something here? And I immediately stopped listening. This is before I found out Crystal Ball is basically half a Nazi. But then I've watched clips since then that are like raise the hair on the back of your neck about what a effing moron she is and what just a bad, nasty black soul she has. But this happened to also show that in addition to being Satan's mistress, she also is an awful journalist. It was unbelievable
Okay.
to watch.
She's
I
not
wanna
a journalist. And Sagar's the one that's actually disappointing because he's really smart and he knows history. Yet they were saying in that interview that Israel is claiming privilege because they don't want to live side by side with the Palestinians who tried to rape, kill, murder, and maim and butcher and kill babies, even though they're saying that they want to do it again and again and again. And look at us. We made up with Japan. We're able to be friendly with Japan and look at their economy. And we're friendly with Germany. When we were at war with them, we dropped 2 bombs on Japan. 2 nuclear bombs. What is she talking about? And how does Sagar not know? Crystal's a idiot, but Sagar has no excuse. That guy is smart. He knows history, and he's supposedly a conservative. He's the conservative. She's the liberal. They are both libtards when it comes to this stuff.
But he is also a Jew hater and an Israel hater, and so that colors everything that he has to say about this topic.
And it's important to note what trigonometry's response was a response that we would have, which was, on trigonometry, they brought up, and Men was not aware of this, and most people aren't aware of this, that in Germany after World War II, if you wanted to get food, you had to watch videos about the Holocaust.
That's right.
So,
And that's how you
That was
de-radicalize the
what
society.
de-radicalization looked like.
right,
That's
and
what
that
it
was the
looks like.
whole, and that was the point of what they were asking Bibi during the interview, was him talking about how they need to de-radicalize Gaza. Now, I just want to finish up quickly with, go on. I don't know if you saw this last week. Rubio did the amazing thing of pulling visas of 80 people from the PLO, including Abbas, not allowing them to come into the country. But I want to say something very interesting, and just hear me out, because you heard it from Judah first. Now think about this. When there's America First, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, or as I call her, the blonde broad, has been saying America only. Now, when I hear that, and men, was this you on the phone? I was talking to you about the flat earthers, about you were amazed how many flat earthers there were.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah, I feel like when I hear that, America only, I feel like, Golan, like I'm listening to like somebody that says they believe in the flat earth or we've never been to the moon. And I'm being dead serious. But here's the interesting thing, Golan. For everybody that believes in this two-state solution, isn't that nation building, Golan? I thought you were all against nation building.
And not only is it nation building, it also is something. Okay, I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first part is, yes, it's nation building, which is something that they decry all the time. They talk about this being something that America should not get involved in, especially the America only morons and the Fourth Reich, or as I call the woke right. So this entire group are always talking about how nation building is how we got into this, and the British, the mandate of Palestine, and how they just started carving up countries and what a nightmare it is. And now let's do the same. Okay. So the hypocrisy is thick, thick, thick like pea soup. But the second part of it is anyone who is still advocating for a two-state solution. And that includes people that I like very, very much. People who I agree with on most things are illiterate to history. They do not understand this conflict. They do not understand the people involved in this conflict. They do not understand the Arabs that are in Gaza and are in the West Bank. I refuse to call them Palestinians. I've decided I'm going to stop doing that since it's a made-up name, and Palestinians used to refer to the Jews. See my episode of Jew Can't Handle the Truth.
By the way, this is men's. This is men's. I got to give him so much credit on this, Golan. This has always been his staunchest point. But go on. Sorry.
I have been saying this. Look, God
Both
bless
of you.
men. I've been saying this since before we started this podcast. You can go watch my other podcast and see me doing
For
it.
proof. Yes, we have signs of proof on there. Go ahead.
Plug it. Jew Can't Handle the Truth.
Yeah, Jew Can't Handle the Truth. Watch the episode called The Myth of the Palestinians. I have an entire list of things that were called Palestinian. They are all Jewish. So the point is, anyone who is advocating for a two-state solution does not understand what these people want, what these monsters are looking for. This is something that is a fantasy. It's like saying, let's give them Narnia. So beyond the fact that it is something that is anti everything that they claim to be about, as you mentioned, the nation building thing, it also happens to be just illiterate nonsense.
I heard Haviv Rettigor give a speech in Norway recently, and he basically made the same comment. The Palestinians, the Muslim Brotherhood, they don't want a two-state solution. They're not looking for a two-state solution. Their big gripe with Israel is that the weakest empire, the weakest nation throughout history took the land back. It wasn't the Ottoman Empire. It wasn't the British Empire. It wasn't some giant. It was a tiny little weakling Jew who took the land back from the Arabs, and they just cannot get over that. And of course, they're starting with the Jews in Israel, but then they move on to the Christians in Syria and the Christians in Lebanon, and they've done that already. I mean, we've seen the ethnic cleansing of all the Christians from the Middle East. But one of the arguments, or one of the things that he pointed out, and I love saying this, is that if this is a conflict because of the state of Israel, then what was the 1929 Hebron massacre? If this is a conflict between the Palestinians, so-called, and the Israelis, why is Iran involved? They don't share a border. There should be no conflict with Iran. Iran is, thousands of miles away. Ultimately, it comes down to they are all taking offense that these tiny little strong Jews got their land back from the Arabs. And there's a concept in Islam, in the religion of Islam. And I'm not talking about the moderate Muslims. a ton, and I say this every time because it is important to point out, and we have a lot of fans, a lot of followers in the United Arab Emirates and Malaysia and lots of different Arab countries where people are open to listening to reason.
Nigeria.
And there's a lot of people there that believe that the Jews and the Muslims are cousins. They're all of the Abrahamic faith, and you can live harmoniously side by side as it has been done, centuries ago. So a long time ago, it was like that. But right now, what these people want is they just want to wipe out the Jews. We're talking about the Islamists, the radicals. They want to wipe out the Jews and the Christians everywhere.
Which is almost all of Islam.
Well,
want
I
to
mean,
colonize it.
but it's important to note, right? If you're talking about, I'm going to go with your framing of it being the radicals. I happen to know a little bit about this, as you do, Mend, and there was a real concept rooted in Islamic political theology. This is not radical Islamic political theology. This is just straight up what it is within the religion. That's the division of the world into the two spheres. We've talked about it before: Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. And Dar al-Islam means lands where Islamic law, Sharia law, already rules. The Muslims hold political power, which means they've already colonized those lands. And Dar al-Harb is the house of war, literally the adobe of war, right? And the idea is we are referring to lands that have not yet been conquered. That's the only two categories that exist. And any place that they had already conquered and then they lost control of is considered the greatest shame. And Israel happens to be the one, as you mentioned, this weak little group of Nebuchadnezzar Jews, this tiny little 0.2% of the world's population, took back this land, and it is the great shame for them, which is why they will stop at nothing to get that part back. And
that is why
it's important to note all of that.
Yeah. And that's why they invented Palestinianism.
Correct.
That's why they did it.
And as you pointed out, them and the Russian.
They tried to, yes, them and the Russians, they tried to do it through war, and they couldn't do it through war. So then they invented this perpetual refugee problem where, we talked about this the other day, United Nations High Council on Refugees resettles refugees, and they've resettled all the refugees from everywhere around the world besides for
it's their whole purpose.
Palestine. It's their whole purpose besides for Palestine. In Palestine, they created a separate agency called UNRWA, and they never resettled a single refugee. And the biggest ironic thing about all of that is that they claim that everybody in Gaza is a refugee, and they also claim that if you kick them out of Gaza, you're ethnically cleansing. So it's either one or the other. Either they're refugees and they don't belong there and they belong somewhere else, or they belong in Gaza and they can't leave. And if you make them leave, then it's ethnically cleansing. There is the fallacy of their arguments.
I just want to end though, because we've gone, and Golan's just coming back, so I don't want him to burn himself out on the first day. I think the best point though that they brought up, I want to ask you two guys a question before this final statement. One of the best things that they said on trigonometry, and by the way, neither of them are Jews, was
one of them does have Jewish relatives. The other one has Lebanese relatives.
Yeah.
But
Lebanese Christian relatives.
Yeah,
yes.
But Golan, but the point they brought up is how everybody, forget about the fact that they constantly use their own as a shield. And the point they bring up is the reason why the death toll in Ukraine isn't as high as it should be is because they're constantly going into the subway systems, into the tunnel systems in the Ukraine. Now, they brought up this great point.
You got to back up. You got to say the big thing online going around is they say the death toll, especially children, in the war in Ukraine versus the war in Gaza is so different is because in Gaza, you have lots of kids and women and civilians dying, and in Ukraine, you don't. Therefore, Israel is deliberately killing women and children. Go, Judah.
As opposed to them, if they really wanted to save the Gazans, if the Hamas really wanted to save the Gazans, they would put them in the tunnels to protect their lives, but no, they bring them up from the tunnels so they could die and
not bring them up. They don't allow them in the tunnels.
They do not allow them in. Anyone who tries to get into the tunnels is immediately dispatched with.
Right. 100%. So I just thought it was such a brilliant point they brought up. And I did not realize that the tunnels were bigger than the tunnels, larger than in Britain. That's how
larger
big
than the London Underground, longer than the London Underground. And the interesting thing about them, by the way, we don't have to go too far into this, but I want to say the tunnels, at some point we should talk about what they are and how they're structured, because it's something that people aren't aware of, as I've discovered. I thought everyone knew, and they absolutely do not They have air filtration systems down there. They have literally stockpiles of food. That's
Yeah.
why they steal all the
They
aid,
took
all
yeah.
of that. It's an
Also, wait, there's
unbelievable
another
endeavor.
there's another really important aspect, is that it is all of the tunnels are built under residential neighborhoods, and they did that by design. Basically, what they did
Not
was
only
they don't
residential
allow
neighborhoods, but kindergartens and
kindergartens,
mosques and
hospitals,
churches
mosques, all of
and
it. Yes.
hospitals and everything else.
And what they figured was they're going to not allow any of the civilians into their tunnels. And if Israel wants to get to the tunnels, they got to go through the civilian population, which is why you're seeing all of those buildings destroyed in Gaza. Because for the Israelis, in the beginning, they would send teams into these buildings. They would find the tunnels. Then when Hamas realized that's how they're doing it, they would booby trap the buildings. So then Israel would send in a drone. If there's a bomb, they just level the whole building. Then they find the entrance to the tunnel,
And it
and they blow up
implodes.
the tunnel.
You know, the Killers had a great album, Golan, we both agree, called Imploding the Mirage.
Yes.
And that's what's actually going on when every time Israel bombs one of these houses, or, you know, it takes out one of these houses, they're imploding the Mirage as everything goes deep underneath.
You can
The
see
last
it
thing I just
actually
wanna-
visually. I'll just say, for those of you who ever watch any of the footage, some of which is being released in order to make Israel look like the bad guy. But if you watch, there's two interesting things you can notice. Look for this in the future. One is you will see the initial blast, and then you will see a secondary blast, because the stockpile of weapons are often held under these institutions that are meant to be the humanitarian institutions. The secondary blast is the stockpile of weapons becoming incendiary. The second thing to notice is when ground is exploded, it explodes up. But here in Gaza, when the ground explodes, it then implodes down. And
Right,
that
it's like
means
a
there is an
demolition,
entire
right?
infrastructure
Right.
underneath whatever you're looking.
It'd be like if they in Vegas or anywhere where they demolish a building. If it demolishes the building and then the building is on the ground,
Right.
it doesn't go 200 feet under the ground, because if that were the case, they would never demolish a building. Last thing, just question quickly to both of you. Started with a question. I want you to answer this question. Why is it that the best people history-wise, knowledge-wise, that are the loudest influencers in speaking about this truth are not American? And when we refer to shows like Trigonometry, we could refer to people like Douglas Murray and quite a few others that are not American that have the most clarity go on when it comes to the Gaza-Israel situation. Is it because they're not scared to bring in the Muslim part of this equation? Or John Spencer is good at it, but John Spencer, let's be honest, is not a very charismatic person. So I'm talking about the charismatic influencers that know. Why are we so lacking in our country with influencers that know how to talk about this situation? Obviously we do, but why are there not others?
I actually think that's a really, really, really good question. I've never thought about that before, but instantly there are several things that come to mind. The first, I think, is what I call the American intellectual straitjacket, which is when you're talking about anybody who has a media career, anybody who has academic ambitions or political ambitions or anything like that, especially with the world being as partisan as it is right now, everyone is now conditioned to tiptoe around certain taboos. And if you say, I'm going to call it Judea and Samaria instead of the West Bank, as we do, right? Right away, they're like, right wing, Nazi. Like, everyone starts shouting out the thing, and the coordination that exists in the media and on the left to kind of blast out all at the same time this message until the label sticks is staggering. So, right, if you say, they're using humans as, civilians as human shields, it's like, Islamophobic. And you're like, oh, wait, now Islamophobic equals racism, even though it doesn't, of course, but this is the way it works. And now you're labeled. If you say Israel has the right to defend itself, they go, genocide. Like, these things, they're afraid. Pundits are actively afraid of going into this minefield of orthodoxy. I think that's number one. Number two, I live in Europe. Europe is having a brutal wake-up call. And the people who have lived through it, the people who have seen it happen, you're talking about Konstantin Kisin, who, while he may have been from Russia, grew up in the UK. He has seen the UK crumble. Melanie Phillips has seen the UK crumble. Douglas Murray has seen the UK crumble. These people have seen it. And I'm certainly watching. I don't remember her name, the woman who, or the man, woman, whatever I can't remember which way it went, but the woman who was nominated for the Oscar, the trans thing. It was a trans movie nominated for the Oscar, and then all these bad tweets came
Yeah.
out.
2 people saw the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the person, but the big bad tweet was, "I'm walking around Spain and all I see are hijabs." Like that was something like that. I walk around Spain, all I see are hijabs. I ask my wife all the time. I go, "Is this just post October 7th? Like they're trolling us? Like did they not have them on? And then after October 7th, they all put them on?" Because I can't take 2 steps without seeing a hijab or a niqab. I'm not kidding. It's an unbelievable thing. And I don't recall it being that way. I've been coming here for 20 something years. I don't recall it being that way. So you're seeing it happen. You're seeing synagogues vandalized. You're seeing Jews attacked in broad daylight. This thing is happening. It's like this spike in real time. You don't have the luxury of the nuanced both sidesism that America seems to traffic in all the time. There are other things. To me, those are the 2 biggest ones. What do you think, Mend?
Thank you for answering my question, Mend.
There are some people here that speak up. Matt Tardio, there's a couple of other influencers on Instagram that I follow. Not Jewish, just they have their heads on right. They have moral clarity. There are some of them out there. They're just not as popular. And also there's something about the British accent that they seem like they're smarter. When you hear that British accent and you hear a guy like Douglas Murray eloquently lay out his case, or there's that girl, what's her name? The British attorney, the barrister, Golan, come on. You know who it is?
Natasha Hausdorff.
Natasha, yes. Yeah, she lays it out with that fine British accent, and she's so eloquent, and she just makes a solid case, one, as to why it's not genocide, which, incidentally, Bibi Netanyahu talked about on the Trigonometry podcast. He goes, if we were genocidal intent, we would have done that on October 8th. We could have done it in one day. They have enough bombs to level the entire place. They could have killed them all. The reason that it's taking so long is because they don't want to kill them all. They don't want to harm the civilians. Unfortunately, when the enemy hides behind civilians, civilians are going to die, but they're trying to mitigate that disaster. And this is every single death is the fault of Hamas. So to answer your question, Judah, there are some level-headed people speaking out, even like, Patrick Big David types. There are people out there.
I'm not saying there aren't.
I know. I want to give him credit.
I'm saying with and yes, I agree with you. I want to give Patrick Bet David credit. And I just want to end with this. We constantly talk about how Israel has done a terrible job with getting the message out. And I just want to say this. I don't think they could. When you look at the episode of Trigonometry and Patrick Bet David on YouTube combined, the Bibi Netanyahu interview, the amount of views between the 2 of them with Bibi was 1 million people. And I would have thought for sure him being on either of those shows, but it goes to show you people that normally tune into Patrick Bet David probably turned off that episode, and many that listen to Trigonometry probably turned off that episode. So this is the huge quagmire, and the Bibi did have the best response when he said, "Are you losing the propaganda war?" And he said, "Yes, for the past 2,500 years." So I just want to welcome Golan back. I want to thank Mend for agreeing with himself, even though he disagreed with himself on the audio of JD Vance. And good job there, Slick. I want to thank everybody. And really, it's good to see Golan back. I want to thank all the downloads and everybody that helps out with this show, all the people on Truth that help out with this show. And I just want to tell everybody you could find us everywhere. Every link of ours is on thedailycheatsheet.com. So all our links are on thedailycheatsheet.com. So go to thedailycheatsheet.com. I'm not going to spell that out for you. I hope you could spell. So I beg of you to please go to thedailycheatsheet.com, listen, like, and follow. And just again, thank you, everybody. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.